202 Foreword _by Sogyal Rinpoche. Foreword. 1200 years ago, one of the most dramatic and daring spiritual undertakings in history took place in Central Asia. The entire teaching of the Buddha, as it existed at the time in India and the Himalayan region, was imported and transplanted in Tibet. Sometimes I try to imagine what it must have been like to be there at that spectacular moment. To see the unforgettable, awe-inspiring figure of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, whose protection and inspiration enabled this whole revolutionary endeavor to unfold. To witness the great Madhyamaka scholar and abbot Santaraksita, who brought with him the vast heritage of Nalanda Monastery, and the Tibetan king Trisong Detsen, the 37th in his line, who sponsored this massive and imaginative program. Or to gaze in wonder as Guru Rinpoche stood atop Mount Hepri and bound the spirits of Tibet under his command, and to watch the first monastic university, called Samje, the inconceivable, gradually take shape. If you had been there, you would have caught sight of scores of realized and learned panditas, who had made the arduous journey across the Himalayas and were working with translators to render the sutras, tantras, and treatises into Tibetan. Transmissions of various kinds were taking place, the first 7 Tibetan monastics were being ordained, and Guru Padmasambhava was opening the mandala of the secret Mantrayana teachings at Chimpu for his 25 disciples. They were the first saints and siddhas of Tibet, headed by Guru Rinpoche's closest disciple and consort, Yeshe Sogyal, the king himself, and the virtuoso translator Vairocana. What a glorious and momentous time this must have been. And although history tells us that this did not happen without opposition and resistance, both human and non-human, as Kyapje Düdjom Rinpoche explains, because the kingdom was protected by the true Dharma, Tibet is known to have enjoyed the happiness of paradise. For about 55 years, it is said, the great Guru stayed in Tibet and the Himalayan regions, sowing his blessings into the environment and the psyche of the Tibetan people. Foreseeing the needs of future generations and the limits of people's understanding at the time, Padmasambhava concealed countless Terma treasure teachings in the landscape and in the unchanging pure awareness of his realized disciples. The Terma teachings remain concealed until the precise moment in time when they will be of maximum benefit and relevance, and they are then revealed by a continuing series of incarnations of the same 25 disciples whom Padmasambhava had entrusted with his teachings and his blessings. As a result, the ancient Nyingma tradition of early translations that follows Padmasambhava's vision comprises both the long, unbroken Karma lineage of canonical teachings and the close lineage of Terma treasures. And at the heart of the Nyingma tradition flows the deepest current of wisdom within the Buddhist teachings of Tibet, the pinnacle of all spiritual vehicles, the great perfection, Dzogchen Chenpo, with its living lineage of realization stretching from the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra down to the present day. One of Guru Rinpoche's 25 disciples showed remarkable aptitude at a very early age. He learned Sanskrit with ease and was quickly chosen to be part of the group of Tibetan translators. Drokpen Kuchang Lotsawa lived as a Nakpa, a lay mantric practitioner, wearing his hair long and dressing in white. He mastered all the secret Mantrayana teachings Padmasambhava conferred on him and became a great siddha. His realization and power were such that he could summon birds from the sky through his mere gaze or a gesture of his hand, and then, it is said, give them teachings. Like others among the 25 disciples, Kuchang Lotsawa reincarnated over the centuries as a series of realized masters who spread and deepened the teachings of the Buddha and brought enormous benefit to beings. In the 19th century he appeared as the great treasure revealer, visionary, and powerful mystic Düdjom Lingpa. I first came to learn about this amazing master after meeting his incarnation, Kyapje Düdjom Rinpoche, who became one of my most beloved teachers. I discovered that everything about Düdjom Lingpa was extraordinary. His birth in 1835 in the Sirta Valley of the Golok region on Guru Rinpoche's day, the 10th day of the waxing moon, His amazing life story, which was a continuous stream of visions, dreams, and prophecies starting at the age of 3, the way in which he received visionary teachings of the greatest depth and clarity directly from enlightened beings of every kind, his mastery of earth termas, mind termas, and pure visions, the sheer profundity of his revelations, such as those contained in these volumes, his visits to Pure Lands, including Sukhavati and the copper-colored mountain paradise of Guru Rinpoche, a visit that spanned one human day but for him lasted 12 years, and his continuous perception of enlightened beings and pure realms. No less astounding was the way in which he predicted his own incarnation, Düdjom Rinpoche Jikral Yeshe Dorje. Having spent most of his life in eastern Tibet and the Golok area, Düdjom Lingpa received a number of visionary instructions that he should go to Pemiko, perhaps the most famous of the hidden lands of Padmasambhava and one that had been opened by Düdjom Lingpa's earlier incarnation, Rikzin Dudal Dorje, 1615-72. It lay far to the southeast and was a region of legendary, majestic beauty and sacred significance. There, Guru Rinpoche said, all the mountains open like blossoming flowers, all the rivers naturally resound mantras and flow with nectar, and rainbows arch across the trees and bushes. During his lifetime, Düdjom Lingpa was unable to travel to Pemiko. Yet he knew of the devastation that within decades would ravage Tibet, and not long before he passed away in 1904, he called his disciples together and told them to pack up and leave for Pemiko. Now in this final age of degeneration, it's time to go to the hidden land of Pemiko. Anyone who puts his or her trust in me should go there as well. But this old man will get there before you youngsters arrive. Just as he predicted, when his disciples eventually made their way to Pemiko, they discovered a 3-year-old child who called them by name, spoke not in the local language but in the Golok dialect, and had already asked his parents to prepare for a party of guests. The young boy was Düdjom Lingpa's reincarnation. It is said that Düdjom Rinpoche was conceived while Düdjom Lingpa was still alive, for there are no limits that can possibly impede the enlightened mind. As I pay homage here to Düdjom Lingpa, I would like to take this opportunity to share a few of my memories of Kyabje Düdjom Rinpoche, whom I had the privilege and blessing of knowing personally. I first met him thanks to my master Jamyang Konshe Chokyi Lodro. He always used to talk about what a wonderful and realized master Düdjom Rinpoche was, and how he was the living representative of Guru Padmasambhava. They held each other in the highest esteem. In Lhasa, where they met in the 1950s, Düdjom Rinpoche confided to Trulshik Rinpoche that he considered Jamyang Konshe the holiest master they could ever hope to find. Düdjom Rinpoche moved to Kalimpong in India in around 1957, and my master took me to meet him and receive his blessing. Jamyang Konshe told him he had never had the privilege of receiving the entire transmission of his Terma revelations and asked him for a special blessing. Düdjom Rinpoche gave him the seal of authorization for all of his own Terma treasures. He also conferred on Jamyang Konshe the empowerments and instructions for his mind treasure of Dorje Drilo, the wild, wrathful aspect of Guru Padmasambhava. They wrote long life prayers for each other. My master spoke of Düdjom Rinpoche as the authentic great sovereign lord of the extraordinary and profound secret Terma treasures. Düdjom Rinpoche called him the sole champion in our time of the great and supreme path of the VAJRA heart essence, the magical wisdom manifestation of the lotus-born Lord Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra. Some years later, I went to visit Düdjom Rinpoche in Kalimpong and by coincidence found myself translating for one of his American disciples. It was then that I realized just how extraordinary he was. By the end of his teaching, pointing out instruction on the nature of mind, tears were running down my face, and I understood what Jamyang Konshe had meant when he said this was an exceptional master. I instantly felt enormous faith in him, and there and then I requested Düdjom Rinpoche to be my master and grant me teachings. Düdjom Lingpa's revelations and Düdjom Rinpoche's Terma cycles are together known as the Düdjom Tersa, the new treasures of Düdjom, which are new in the sense that they are still fresh with the warm breath of the darkness, and because there is only one master in the lineage between Guru Rinpoche and the practitioners of the treasures. Although I see these two great masters as one and the same, their outward characters were quite different. Düdjom Lingpa was a commanding and unpredictable figure, well known for his wrathful demeanor and behavior. Düdjom Rinpoche describes how to visualize him: his body is red in color, his beard reaching as far as his heart, and his eyes are open wide, staring steadily straight ahead. His long hair is mostly tied up in a knot on top of his head with a small sacred book, while the rest tumbles loosely over his shoulders. He wears a gown of reddish-brown silk, a shawl of white cotton, and conch shell earrings, with a sword of wisdom thrust through his belt. His right hand wields a VAJRA in the sky, and his left hand rolls a purba dagger of meteoric iron. He sits with his left leg stretched out slightly in the posture of royal play. In marked contrast, Düdjom Rinpoche had about him an air of captivating kindness, gentleness, and serenity. In fact, he used to tell a story about his predecessor that always brought a twinkle to his eye. When Düdjom Lingpa was about to pass away and leave this world, some of his disciples approached him timidly and begged him to return in a more peaceful form. He chuckled and said, "Well, all right. But don't complain if I am too peaceful." Like his previous incarnation, Düdjom Rinpoche was a very great Dzogchen master. It is said of him that he was the body emanation of Kuchung Lopsawa, the speech emanation of Yeshe Sogyal, and the mind emanation of Guru Padmasambhava. In the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, I tried to sum up some of his characteristics. He was small, with a beautiful and gentle face, exquisite hands, and a delicate, almost feminine presence. Like a yogin, he wore his hair long and tied up in a knot, his eyes always glittered with secret amusement. His voice seemed the voice of compassion itself, soft and a little hoarse. One of Padmasambhava's Terma prophecies captured his qualities with remarkable prescience. In a noble family there will appear an emanation of Kuchung Lopsawa bearing the name Junana, keeping the yogic discipline of a master of mantras, his appearance not fixed in any way, his behavior spontaneous like a child, and endowed with piercing wisdom. He will reveal new termas and safeguard the ancient ones, and he will guide whoever has a connection with him to the glorious copper-colored mountain in Ngayab Ling. Düdjom Rinpoche, I learned, began receiving termas when he was a young boy, and he met Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Sogyal in a vision when he was only 13. Although he revealed his own powerful terma treasures, he decided to prioritize maintaining, protecting, and spreading the older termas as well as the karma tradition of the LINGPA'S. While still quite young, he was regarded as a supreme master of the great perfection, and by the time he was in his 30s he had already accomplished an enormous amount. When other lamas saw his famous prayer calling the lama from afar, which he composed at the age of 30 and which captured completely his profound realization, they immediately recognized him as a great Tertan and Dzogchen master. Chokyi Nyama Rinpoche told me that his father, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, one of the greatest teachers of Dzogchen and Mahamudra in recent times, used to say that if anyone ever wondered what a true Dzogchen master and practitioner was like, they only had to look at Düdjom Rinpoche. His eyes always sparkled with a kind of freshness and vibrant clarity. Unencumbered by opinions of good or bad, and ever carefree, spacious, and relaxed, Düdjom Rinpoche had about him a childlike innocence, you could call it an enlightened purity. His work in compiling the Nyingma Karma, which he began at the age of 74, paralleled the achievement of Jamgon Kongtrul in compiling the treasure teachings in the precious treasury of termas. He saved many precious texts and sacred relics from loss, and with meticulous care, he compiled, preserved, amended, and annotated the older texts and practices, to the extent that there seems hardly anything he did not have a hand in perfecting. In fact, Düdjom Rinpoche's achievements for the Nyingma tradition as a whole were monumental. He gave the transmission of the precious treasury of termas 10 times, and he transmitted the karma and the 100,000 tantras of the LINGPA'S as well as countless treasure cycles and priceless teachings. Unanimously requested to become the supreme head of the Nyingma tradition. His own revelations and writings fill 25 volumes, among which his History of the LINGPA'S and Fundamentals of the LINGPA'S are classics. His compositions were amazing, his scholarship famous, his calligraphy much copied, his poetry lucid yet profound, and his detailed knowledge of every aspect of Vajrayana practice and ritual truly phenomenal. Düdjom Rinpoche also played a huge part in re-establishing Tibetan culture and education in exile, and he composed his History of Tibet at the request of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. On occasion, His Holiness has expressed his regret at not having been able to receive transmissions directly from Düdjom Rinpoche, although when he embarked on a retreat on the Kagje, 8 great practice mandalas, according to the Sangwa Gyatchen Pure Visions of the great 5th Dalai Lama, Düdjom Rinpoche wrote a practice guide for him that he found outstanding. Among Düdjom Rinpoche's countless disciples were the most eminent lamas of the last century, including the most senior masters of Mindroling and Dorje Drak monasteries, and he had innumerable followers all over Tibet and the Himalayas, Europe, America, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. When he gave the transmission of the new treasures of Düdjom at Baudhanath in Nepal in 1977-78, thousands upon thousands flocked to attend. After my master Jamyang Konshe passed away, Düdjom Rinpoche held me with all his care and compassion, and I had the great privilege of serving as his translator for a number of years. I quickly discovered that he had a unique way of inspiring the realization of the innermost nature of mind. It was through the very way he spoke. The words he used were simple and down to earth, and yet they had a way of penetrating right into your heart. As the instructions on the nature of mind flowed effortlessly from his wisdom mind, it seemed as if he became the teaching of Dzogchen Chenpo itself, and his words served to gather you into the actual experience. Through his presence, and through his gaze, he created a subtle but electrifying atmosphere, enveloping you in his wisdom mind, so that you could not help but feel the pure awareness that he was pointing out. I can only compare it to sitting in front of a blazing, open fire, you cannot help but feel warm. It was as simple as that. Düdjom Rinpoche demonstrated, again and again, that when a great master directs the blessing of his wisdom mind, something extraordinary and very powerful can take place. All your ordinary thoughts and thinking are disarmed, and you arrive face to face with the deeper nature, the original face, of your own mind. In Düdjom Rinpoche's words, all the stirrings of discursive thoughts melt, dissolve, and slip into the expanse of Rigpa, your pure awareness, which is like a cloudless sky. All the power and strength is lost to the Rigpa awareness. At that moment everything drops. A completely different dimension opens up, and you glimpse the sky-like nature of mind. With Düdjom Rinpoche I came to understand that what the Master does, through the power and blessing of his realization, is to make the naked truth of the teaching come alive in you, connecting you to your Buddha nature. And you recognize, in a blaze of gratitude, that there is not, and could never be, any separation between the Master's wisdom mind and the nature of your own mind. Düdjom Rinpoche said just this in his Calling the Lama from Afar. Since pure awareness of knownness is the real Buddha. In openness and contentment I found the Lama in my heart. When we realize this unending natural mind is the very nature of the Lama, then there is no need for attached, grasping, or weeping prayers or artificial complaints. By simply relaxing in this uncontrived, open, and natural state, we obtain the blessing of aimless self-liberation of whatever arises. At the same time, Düdjom Rinpoche wore his realization and learning with such simplicity and ease. I sometimes felt that his outward appearance was so subtle and understated that it would have been easy for a newcomer to miss who he really was. Once in 1976 I traveled with him from France to the United States. I shall never forget that flight for as long as I live. Düdjom Rinpoche was always very humble, but now and then he would say something that betrayed what an incredible master he was. At one point I was sitting next to him and he was gazing out the window at the Atlantic Ocean when he said quietly, "May I bless all those I fly over, all the beings living in the ocean down below." It was the way he said it that struck me and sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel that there was simply no question. He actually did possess the power to bless and relieve the suffering of countless living beings. And beyond any shadow of doubt, there and then, they were receiving his blessing. In that moment I realized what a great master he was, and not just a master, but a Buddha. To tell the truth, even now, 30 years or so since he left this world, Düdjom Rinpoche's greatness still continues to dawn on me, day after day. The gratitude I feel toward him is boundless, and not a day goes by when I do not think of his words. Having purified the great delusion, the heart's darkness, the radiant light of the unobscured sun continuously rises. This good fortune is the kindness of the Lama, our only father and mother. Lama of unrepairable kindness, I only remember you. I must also mark my gratitude to Düdjom Rinpoche's spiritual wife, Sangyam Kushok Rikzin Wangmo, who was one of the greatest Dakinis I have ever known. She played a unique and crucial role in Rinpoche's life. With her extraordinary love, care, and magnetic charm, she provided the perfect environment for Rinpoche, so that the teachings and revelations could pour from his wisdom mind. She lengthened his life and enabled him to stay among us for as long as he did, longer in fact than had been predicted by his masters, so as to teach, guide, and bless so many disciples and benefit countless sentient beings. Not only do I have the greatest devotion and respect for her but also a deep feeling of love, and I feel honored that both she and Rinpoche made me truly feel like part of their family. How impossible it seems to try to measure in words the qualities and realization of masters like Düdjom Lingpa and Düdjom Rinpoche. Even the contributions to the future of the Dharma, I feel, are fathomless and not widely known. The longer I live, the more convinced I am that the Dzogchen teachings have enormous potential at this time to touch and awaken people all over the world, people from any country and any kind of background. I have heard a number of prophecies about these teachings and how powerful, transformative, and relevant they are at critical points in our history, at times such as this. One prophecy says, in this dark age, the heart essence of Samantabhadra will blaze like fire. If these predictions are to come true, I know it will have a lot to do with the two great masters Düdjom Lingpa and Düdjom Rinpoche and their epic contributions to the Dharma, to sentient beings, and to the world. Just look at the impact of their work. Düdjom Lingpa's prolific treasures have spread all over Tibet, east and west, the Himalayan lands like Bhutan, and now the Western world as well. His revelations, edited by Düdjom Rinpoche himself, fill 20 large volumes. Then, Düdjom Lingpa's 8 sons were all incarnations of great masters, perhaps the most renowned being Jigme Tenpe Nyama, the third Dodrupchen Rinpoche, who was my master Jamyang Konshe's root Lama, and whose writings on Dzogchen are treasured by H. the Dalai Lama. Düdjom Lingpa's daughters were considered to be Dakinis. It was not only his children who were exceptional but his students as well. In the prayer that Düdjom Rinpoche composed celebrating Düdjom Lingpa's extraordinary life story, there is this verse. Your 8 sons, holders of the family line, were the 8 great bodhisattvas. 13 supreme disciples accomplished the body of light. And 1,000 attained the stage of Vidyadhara. To you, who established this victorious line of realized beings, I pray. 13 of Düdjom Lingpa's disciples attained the rainbow body, and in his prophecies Düdjom Lingpa was told that 100 might even attain the great transference rainbow body. As Düdjom Rinpoche wrote, in this precious lineage of ours, this is not just ancient history. For today, just as in the past, there are those who through the paths of Trikcho and Toggle have attained the final realization and have dissolved the gross material bodies into rainbow bodies of radiant light. In his history, he wrote, "It is impossible to estimate the number of those who passed into the rainbow body by following the paths of the profound treasures of the great perfection," and he lists a number of those who attained the rainbow body, including the father of my own tutor Lama Gyadrak, a simple man called Sonam Namgyal whose body dissolved into light, leaving nothing behind but his nails and hair. These were offered to Jamyang Konshe, who verified it as an actual case of a rainbow body. Even today we continue to hear of instances of the rainbow body, for example the well-known case of Khenpo Arko in eastern Tibet in 1998. There is a story about Düdjom Lingpa that I find fascinating. In the mid-1850s he had a dream in which he was given a conch shell and asked to blow it in each of the 4 directions. The loudest sound was in the west, and he was told in the dream that this was a sign that disciples particularly suited to him were to be found in the western regions where his renown would spread and where he would have countless followers in the future. Something uncannily similar happened to Düdjom Rinpoche, and he told us the story many years later, in France. One of the lamas who had traveled to Pemako to find Düdjom Lingpa's incarnation was Ling Lama or Gyeen Choja Gyatso, an accomplished Dzogchen master who had been a disciple of Patrul Rinpoche before becoming a close student of Düdjom Lingpa. He was one of Düdjom Rinpoche's first teachers. He told Düdjom Rinpoche that Patrul Rinpoche had asked Düdjom Lingpa's son Jigme Tenpe Nyama, the third Dodrupchen, to give a teaching on the guide to the Bodhisattva way of life at the age of 8. Gyeen Choja Gyatso reasoned that if the son could do so at 8, then the father, in other words Düdjom Lingpa's reincarnation, should do so by the age of 7½ at the latest. So he requested Düdjom Rinpoche to teach from the first chapters of Santadeva's great work. When the teaching had finished, Gyeen Choja Gyatso was overjoyed, and he invited Düdjom Rinpoche to go outside and sound a conch in each of the 4 directions. In the south there was a beautiful tone, but in the west an even louder and sweeter sound rang out. Gyeen Choja Gyatso told him that his work would be of immeasurable benefit in the south and in the west. Thinking of this, how meaningful it is that Düdjom Rinpoche came and taught and blessed so many people in the west. And how moving it is that he chose to pass away in Europe, in France, thereby blessing the Western world with the power of his enlightenment and confirming the arrival of these teachings in lands that had not known them before. The fact that Sangyam Kushok Rigzin Wangmo also chose to leave this world in the United States points to the same truth. It is as if they were placing the seal on Düdjom Rinpoche's celebrated aspiration. May the living tradition of Guru Padmasambhava, Bodhisattva Santaraksita, and the Dharma King Trisong Detsen spread throughout the world in all directions. May the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha be present in the minds of all, inseparably, at all times, bringing peace, happiness, and well-being. Just as Düdjom Rinpoche's life covered most of the 20th century, Düdjom Lingpa's spanned the 19th century, a time when a number of great masters were pioneering a far-reaching renewal of Buddhism in Tibet, in the open-minded, ecumenical spirit of Rimé. They included masters such as Jamyang Konshe Wangpo, Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Thaye, Chokje Dekhan Lingpa, and Jamgon Mipam Rinpoche. Interestingly, it was Jamyang Konshe Wangpo who sent his own close disciple, the incarnate Lama Gyame Ngeden Wangpo, to Düdjom Lingpa. He told him, "You have a karmic link with Düdjom Lingpa from past lives, so meeting him will be enormously useful to the teachings and to beings." Gyame Ngeden Wangpo became the great treasure revealer's heart son and custodian of his treasures, and he stayed with him until he passed away. He then traveled to Pemako, where he recognized Kyapje Düdjom Rinpoche as the reincarnation of Düdjom Lingpa, became his root lama, and gave him many of the most important transmissions, including Düdjom Lingpa's revelations. My own predecessor, the treasure revealer Lharab Lingpa, who was born in 1856, was somewhat younger than Düdjom Lingpa, and I know of no record of their having met. And yet their lives were mysteriously entwined. Lharab Lingpa was a very close confidant, student, and teacher of Dodrupchen Jigme Tenpe Nyama, Düdjom Lingpa's eldest son, and he was also the master of Düdjom Lingpa's youngest son, Dorje Drajal, as well as three of Düdjom Lingpa's grandsons, Turchen Kunzang Nyama, Sonam Doyen, and Tenzin Nyama. In fact, Lharab Lingpa composed and gave to Dorje Drajal a guru yoga practice that focuses on the Lama as embodying the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra, Guru Padmasambhava, Dorje Dralo, Dudal Dorje, Düdjom Lingpa, Jigme Tenpe Nyama and himself. On another occasion, one day in 1923, Lharab Lingpa experienced a vision of Guru Rinpoche and a throng of Dakinis, who gave him a 5-part ladrup, a sadhana practice for accomplishing the Lama, in which Düdjom Lingpa, Kanyam Lingpa, Jamyang Konshe Wangpo, Kusum Lingpa, and Jamgon Kongtrul each appear in the form of a deity. Düdjom Lingpa manifests as Dorje Dralo. In the vision, Lharab Lingpa was told how urgent it was that he accomplish this practice. The more we look, the more it seems that Düdjom Lingpa's impact on the spread of the Buddha's teachings is endless, and we can detect his traces everywhere. There is one more intriguing link between Düdjom Lingpa and Turchen Lharab Lingpa, one that had a momentous significance for the flourishing of the Dharma. In 1980, the great Kenshin Jigme Phuntsik Rinpoche, 1933–2004, one of the incarnations of Lharab Lingpa, founded his Buddhist academy in the Laring Valley in Sirte. He built his own residence on the very same site as Düdjom Lingpa's hermitage, a place also associated with the 13 disciples who attained the rainbow body. One of Düdjom Lingpa's prophecies had in fact predicted that after 100 years, when only the name of the Buddhadharma remained, in this very place a master would come to fan the flames of the embers and make the Nyingma teachings blaze once more. It was there that the truly remarkable Laring Gar 5 Sciences Buddhist Academy developed, a center of excellence setting the highest standards of study and practice, seeing 600 fully trained Khenpos graduate in the first 20 years, and putting in motion a renaissance of Buddhist teaching and practice in eastern Tibet. I am deeply touched to be asked to write this foreword to a collection of translations of Düdjom Lingpa's Dzogchen teachings, and I do so out of my deep and undying devotion to Kyapje Düdjom Rinpoche and Sangyam Rikzin Wangmo, to his lineage, and to all the masters who hold it. This is a major achievement, as these teachings are legendary because of the profundity and completeness. As Düdjom Rinpoche wrote, even if you were to actually meet Samantabhadra, I swear that he would not say a single word other than these. Alan Wallace has made a great contribution in translating these precious teachings, and I am moved by the fact that he is not simply a very experienced translator but also someone who is a deeply conscientious and dedicated practitioner, one who has a knowledge of many Buddhist traditions but has found his home in these extraordinary treasures of the lineage of Düdjom Lingpa. How wonderful as well that he has translated the brilliant clarifications provided by the great Sirah Khandro and Pema Tashi. The profound teachings in these volumes speak for themselves, and there is no need to elaborate on the contents. But to highlight a few crucial points, I believe that the teachings of Dzogpa Chenpo need to be approached with great care, reverence, and maturity. First, we need to recognize just how rare, how precious, and how deep they are, as they actually possess the capacity to bring realization and even liberation in one lifetime. As Düdjom Rinpoche wrote, don't throw away such a precious jewel as this and then look around for semi-precious stones. Now that you have had such great good fortune as to have met this profound teaching, the very heartblood of the Dakinis, your mind should be uplifted and you should practice with tremendous inspiration and joy. As we can see, Düdjom Lingpa's revelations explicitly spell out the qualities we need in order to embrace this path and practice these teachings. They include devotion and pure perception, trust and faith, a keen understanding of impermanence and cause and effect, contentment and disenchantment with mundane distractions, compassion and bodhisattva motivation, honesty and courage, commitment and single-minded enthusiasm, and the ability to see the appearances of this life as dreamlike and integrate the practice into everyday life. Düdjom Rinpoche would always encourage students to embrace the Ngondro practice, saying how profound and important it is. A full understanding and realization of the true essence of Dzogchen Chenpo depends entirely on these preliminary practices. In particular, it is vital to put all your energy into the practice of Guru Yoga, holding on to it as the life and the heart of the practice. In these remarkable teachings, Düdjom Lingpa gives direct instructions about how to consider the Master as Guru Padmasambhava in person, see him as the nature of our own clear light Rigpa awareness, and through the practice of Guru Yoga, unite our mind with his wisdom mind. By merging your mind with his, he says, you will experience the non-conceptual primordial consciousness of ultimate reality, and extraordinary realizations will arise in your mind stream. And so I encourage you from the bottom of my heart, if you have not already done so, to seek out qualified lamas of this lineage and receive the necessary empowerments, oral transmissions, and instructions for these sacred and profound teachings so that you can put them into practice and proceed along the sublime path of Dzogchen Chenpo. It is our great good fortune that the new treasure lineage of Düdjom Lingpa and Düdjom Rinpoche thrives today, thanks to the kindness and enlightened vision of their own incarnations, their family lineages, and the masters who hold these precious teachings, allowing them to resound all over the world. The prophecy of the conch shell is playing out before our very eyes. Finally, let me take this opportunity to pray that this great Nyingma lineage and the tradition of the two extraordinary masters Düdjom Lingpa and Düdjom Rinpoche may continue in the future, going from strength to strength, touching countless sentient beings, and awakening them to their own enlightened nature, the indestructible heart essence. May all the visions and aspirations of Düdjom Lingpa and Düdjom Rinpoche be accomplished, as fully and as quickly as possible. I believe that these two great masters continue to bless the whole world. Freed from physical form, they abide in the unconditioned timeless splendor of the Dharmakaya, benefiting all beings beyond the limitations of time and space, and I know that if we call upon them now with all our hearts, we will find them with us instantly. So I pray that with the blessings the lives of all the great masters may be safe and strong, and that the precious teachings of the Buddha may flourish and spread, to pacify conflict, suffering, and negativity all over the world, to bring peace and tranquility, and to ensure the welfare and happiness of living beings everywhere. And may all of us who are striving to follow and practice the sublime teachings of the clear light Dzogchen Chenpo progress in our realization, overcome all obstacles, and finally seize the stronghold of Samantabhadra. Sogyal Rinpoche. Publisher's acknowledgement. The publisher gratefully acknowledges the generous contribution of the Hershey Family Foundation toward the publication of this book.